Hi. Uh-oh. Welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm the founder of the Bobby White Foundation. I'm here along with...
Good afternoon. I'm Bonnie Snyder, your co-host.
So, I don't know what happened to my throat just then.
I was thinking, do I need to jump in? I was like, I should recover.
A little tickle. So, we're back. We were off last week because...
We were off for a couple of weeks because...
it's only been a week. We only missed one show, I think. 2? Did we miss 2 shows? I don't know. Of course, those of you who aren't here in Florida, it was because of Hurricane Ian, not knowing, well, it was originally heading directly towards us, and unfortunately, it still hit Florida and took a sharp right and hit South Florida. But it came up almost the whole entire middle of the state. You got stuck in it.
I did. When the storm track was, originally plotted, it was supposed to go to hit Tampa. And, of course, living close to Tampa, I'm like, let me think here. My grandson who's with me, his mom, it's like I'd feel more comfortable, if he was at my house. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, my daughter is, further enough in. I was like, plus he had plans to go spend the weekend with his mom anyway. So I took him to his mother's to ride out the storm there. And, I had plans. I was going to go, to the Orlando area, to visit Greg. And so I'm with my daughters, and whatnot, go to Greg's, and then I notice storm headed to Orlando. I was like, the devil, is this not supposed to happen? But anyway, needless to say, that area, at least where he lives, gets, the wind and the rain, not a lot of wind and rain, but we could hear it. It wasn't that bad. So the day after, I was there, and, we ventured out, normal tree limbs and stuff, down in his neighborhood. There was one section of town very close to his, like 3 miles away from his house where it was flooded, but I wish I had, if I thought about it, I sent the pictures of it. But all in all, it was good. So we get back to his house. Now, I've shared, Greg, works with a touring company. And the next, it was Saturday, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. He's going to go to work, and where he was going to be at Kennedy that day. And I'm like, oh, I'll just meet you at Kennedy, we'll hang, make Kennedy a day of it. And he's, looking out the window. This is 4 o'clock in the morning, mind you. He's looking out the window. And, I'm like watching him because he's in the window a really long time. Usually it's, a quick peek out and he goes and gets ready for work. Holy crap, he says. Said something different, but holy crap. And I'm like, what is it? He's just trying to figure out why it was so bright outside. This neighborhood has street lights, but it was exceptionally bright. And he's like, it's flooded. I'm trying to think, how did it flood? Because it didn't rain. It rained the day of the storm. From what I understand, day of the storm, it rained. There was no rain after that. Well, he lives on a preserve, and there goes our AC. He lives on this preserve, and when they pumped the water from downtown Orlando, and wherever they dumped it, they didn't think, somebody didn't strategize the logistics of it, because what it did, it backed up into the preserve and overwhelmed the drainage system for the preserve. So I've got pictures of it bubbling through the manhole covers.
Right.
And, of course, he starts getting these alerts on his phone that, the preserve was completely impassable. So, we're flooded in for a couple of days.
Right.
And so the joke was, I leave here to go to my daughter's to escape the storm, to get to Orlando and get flooded in after the storm.
Right. Well, and we had John, our producer, we want to thank Rob and John. Rob just went running by to turn off the AC because John shut down production the beginning of the week because originally the storm was heading towards us, and so then it changed course, and then John was like, and we're like, okay, yeah, we don't, too much to deal with. I have my place that it takes me a day to prepare for these, at least, sometimes a day and a half, depending, putting stuff away, because now I got to do it all by myself. And so we're like, okay, that's great. And then you were stuck in Orlando, because then he's like, oh, well, we're going to start shooting again on Thursday. We could shoot Friday, and I'm like, well.
That's why we missed 2 days, because we missed the worst first week was the storm was coming. Second week we missed because the cleanup and I was stuck in Orlando.
Oh, okay. Well, however it worked. But anyway, so it was like, well, Bonnie's in Orlando. We don't know what's going on, so it's like, let's just wait. So, but good news. I mean, everything here at least was good. I got my trees all cleaned out. Mm-hmm. Still got to clean up my yard. Got the roof blown off. Blew off my neighbor's roof. But it's always anytime a storm comes through like this, and I have to secure everything, mm-hmm. and it happened again. I'm walking through the yard, and I have a meltdown. And I'm yelling at Bobby that you're supposed to be here helping me do this. It's a lot of work, but. I mean, I've got it streamlined enough so that it's not that difficult now for me to do it by myself. So you need to define
when you said I, blew off the neighbor's roof, blew off my roof.
I get up on the roofs with a ladder and a leaf blower.
Okay, so, because when you said it, I was like, blew off y'all's roofs, and we're talking about the storm, and my brain is like,
I didn't realize
so did the roofs get blown off on the storm?
No,
But the storm didn't blow the roof off, I blew it off.
Blew the leaves off the roof. The leaves and the branches. I actually had a couple, they weren't like really big, but probably like 3-inch in diameter by 4 or 5 foot branches. My house, I have all these oak trees, and so it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. First thing before it actually even got real close, it was like the first day, my new neighbors across the street, first thing that morning, before anything really super windy ever happened, oak tree fell on their roof and put a hole in it. They ended up losing 2 oak trees during this event. And this is the first time they've lived there with a hurricane, and I'm like, and I don't know, you might have seen my posts. I'm like, I know people think I'm crazy, but we did actually have one of the parties that we used to have years ago. An American Indian came with his girlfriend, and he took Bobby and I aside one time and walked the property with us, and told us that this was sacred Indian ground. And there are, I don't know if you'd call them folklore stories or whatever, but I'm not the only one that believes it, that we've been protected in this area for years from hurricanes. Because if you remember how many hurricanes have come heading straight towards us, I don't know if it was Irma or another one that was like heading right up Tampa Bay, took a right, went just around us, and then went back to the Gulf. And so anyways, I told that to my neighbor, and she's like, I sure hope so. I don't think she believes me because of her trees coming down. But anyways, at least we all fared good, and everybody's back to normal. There's a lot of relief efforts going on, even in our community. Our district Rotaries are having a collection, donation drive. I think pretty much all the Moss Nissans in Pasco County, may be some in North Pinellas. I don't remember the exact ones. I think today, I think they're going to start going down tomorrow, so on Saturday. So there's a lot of collections and people heading down and helping out. And I have one of my professors, he lives in Fort Myers, and I was able to get in touch with them, and they're okay. They're helping out some of their neighbors who lost more. But yeah, getting back to regular routine after an event like this, it takes a while.
It does. It does. And what I found, as we're getting back to regular routine, and our theme, what we do here. I was on a work call last evening, and it was myself, another team member of mine, and woman from same agent, similar agency. This week alone, there were 3 suicide deaths.
Do you know what the area? Was it this area?
Yeah, it was in this area.
In
As
this
a matter of fact, our Friday morning focus group meeting, Peter had brought up one of the people that took his life was he asked me if I can't think of the person's name right now, and quite frankly, I wouldn't say it on air out of respect for the family. But he asked me, did I know this person? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but somebody that Peter knows, that knew very well, business owner.
Well, and just prior to this, we lost a nurse who had 2 young children. Also during this beginning of the week, a veteran down in South Florida. We're putting together about a dozen purple folders to send down to his family and friends.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I mean, I know just for myself, just preparing and unpreparing and not knowing what's going to happen when these catastrophic storms head our way, it's hard.
Oh, it is.
It's really hard. I'm extremely fortunate. My neighbor and I are really pretty close. I lost power for 14 hours, I think, and I was pretty well prepared. But if anything happened, my neighbor has a Generac generator. Mm-hmm. She had lights and everything. No TV or anything, because all the internet and everything went down. But one good thing about, if you could say a good thing about a storm, is the change in our weather. It's been nice and cool. Usually after these storms and we don't have power for so long, it is so hot and muggy, but we've had just really nice weather up here. I think it's helped make the relief efforts down in South Florida a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. A little bit easier. So, because of this too, we've had a lot of events postponed, but some were able to happen. We had spoke before about our partnership with Pasco County Parks and Recreation, and they were able to go through with their week this week of their events. Strike Out the Stigma was Wednesday night, and they had a really good event there. I was going to I wrote it down, but on the wrong piece of paper. Which bowling alley it was?
Lane Golf.
No, that's what ours is. On this side, theirs on the east side it's something else.
I thought it was Lane Golf.
Mm-mm. I can't remember the name because I would remember that. I'll have it next week because they're also the Stomp Out Suicide 5K Run Walk Saturday, the day this will air. We'll have pictures from that event also next week. So they had a really good turnout, she said, Wednesday, which I was really glad, because there's still, even though we're not in the crux of what is going on in South Florida, it still affects what happens up here too. And so they had a good turnout for that.
Well, I mean, a part of where, we're not directly affected by the material and property loss that's going on in South Florida. However, on my side of the street, I should say, a lot of people from those areas have relocated. I hate to use the word migrate. I found that to be very disingenuous to them and what they're going on. But they have been forced to relocate to this area because what I'm finding is a lot of agencies, the one that I work for as well, has mobilized, put additional resources in place to ensure that these individuals are taken care of. I was in our Friday meeting. One of our partners, Rick, was talking about picking up, his Uber, picking up, someone, driving them somewhere, and he was talking that they were in the Fort Myer area. Mm-hmm. And it was a mom and a child. The dad had stayed back home, to see if they could, at least salvage, if they could find anything, like their house was completely gone. And, he was talking about, and I'm looking at the, real, like the human stories that are coming out of the storm, and its aftermath. But anyways, the only thing I want to find is, it was like a charm bracelet that it's either her mom or her grandmother gave her before they passed away. But anyway, he says, as they're talking, he says, we lost everything. Now, mind you, they're down in Fort Myer. He said the only hotel that they could find that had room in it was in Clearwater, St. Pete. Wow. So now, can you imagine living right over here in St. Myer, and you got to travel
all the way to Clearwater.
All the way to Clearwater before you can find a hotel room that had accommodations for you. Wow. And I was like, wow, that was, and I circle back around, to the human toll and, the, loss of human life through all of this is just, I remember looking at the news, and seeing, they were like, Ian's already claimed 109 people, 55 of them were down, were in this Fort Myer area, so, figure, half of the deaths were from that area.
One area.
And then I was, also looking at, Fort Myer got hit. There was the pier is gone, and people had side by side. This is before.
Oh yeah.
A lot of iconic areas are gone, and then over, near us, I was looking at the devastation in like Pine Island.
Pine Island, Sanibel, the causeway's gone.
Yes.
All those barrier islands out there, Cape Coral. My neighbor's son's mother-in-law rode out the storm in Cape Coral with her dog. Her house is okay. She lost palm trees. It's all flooded around her house. I don't think she can get off the. She's going to get off the island this weekend because she's coming up here because her kids are coming down to visit. So she's going to end up coming up here. But she did finally leave her home and get to a condo. But there was a period of time where even if people down there were okay, they couldn't get word out.
Right.
Because of the cell towers. And it took a while, and before we even had, because nobody even knew what happened, But fortunately, she was okay. She rode out the storm, and
yeah, I was looking at the other thing I was looking at, pictures after the fact And there was an area, so obviously, I later, determined that it was south of us, where, I get notifications on my phone. I-75 not passable.
yeah.
But I-75
Yeah,
is
that'd
not
be
passed.
so-
And I
Yeah.
happened to see pictures of it, and I mean, literally, a huge section of Interstate 75 was completely
Yeah,
underwater.
I
There
saw
was
those.
no way that, and I just, was like, wait a minute, I got to take 75 to get back home. Is this, I mean, not that I was really worried about being stranded in. Like I said, it's food. If I, wanted to be adventurous and walk, I could have put on my wading boots and waded through the water if I needed to go to the store. But anyway, I'm looking at this, and like I said, it ended up being south of us. We we also had a guy kayaking down the middle of the road.
Oh, did you really?
Oh, it was so funny. We're, Greg is, sitting at the computer, and, I happened to, was like looking at movement outside the window, and I'm looking, and his computer is like right in front of his window, and he had said something, and I'm like, is that really a guy kayaking in the middle of the street? And I don't think it's ever flooded like this before, but it was it's kind of what he does.
Well, and there's a lot of areas too that, kind of like with you guys over there, that weren't per se hit directly by the storm, but the aftermath, the rains and the rivers overflowing and flooding is tremendous.
There was no like the way I understood, the only rainy day that happened at Greg's neighborhood was the day of the storm, like the day the
Right.
storm went through. What ended up flooding was this was the cleanup
Right.
afterwards. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Well, like the
wow.
Peace River, there are two rivers that hit record flood stage, higher than they've ever been. And that's what, and it's because of the way that our rivers flow through Florida, it's, sometimes you can't tell what's gonna happen.
I mean, I'm sitting back and how you strategize. It's like I'm no, as far as like logistics and whatnot. But I'm looking at there's a marshland like I said, literally behind Greg's house, and I'm sitting there thinking all they should do is just strategically take a few pumps, along this area, feed them over to the marsh, and just pump the water into the marsh. Is that really going to, where is that going to back up? And, there's a pretty good distance between, where the marsh, there's the marsh, and then there's, what do we want to call it, frontage area, or I'm going to refer to it as frontage area, and then you get to the house. I would think you would have to pump a lot of water in there for it to really flood up into the house, but still,
right.
Who am I? Who am I to make that decision?
Oh, well, at least just everybody just continue to pray and help however you can. The people in South Florida, throughout Central Florida too. Like we said, Daytona International Speedway was flooded. The track was flooded. They showed water halfway up the wall, the outside wall, and so it went right up through the center of the state.
I was wondering how it was going to affect, again, tourism downtown. Downtown Orlando. I think, Disney closed for a couple of days. Universal closed for a couple of days. They took the shuttle, the spaceship at Kennedy. It had been sitting on the launch pad for a while. They finally, was like, no, they took the shuttle and moved it back to what is it called? It's called VRB. What is it? Thank you. What did you just say? Thank you. The VAB, Vehicle Assembly Building.
Oh, okay.
But and this building is huge. But, like I said, they took the rocket from there and moved it, basically we're getting it off the launch pad,
Right.
taking it back to, can you imagine a hurricane knocking down this
geez.
rocket? It's like $1 billion. It's like over in the Gulf. But there's one tourist attraction. It's called Wild Florida. That's underwater. And, from what Greg was saying, they're shut down at least for the next, we don't expect to go back into operating for the next 3 weeks. And we're like, do they have that much water? I was like, well, part of it is, waiting for the water to recede. They have to recover the animals they had. So, we're talking alligators and crocodiles and whatnot. When the water rose, of course.
Where'd they go?
They almost end up at. And so, from what I understand, there was a, looking for our alligators.
And there, I saw on the news, there's last night in Mayaca City, which is, I think it's north of Fort Myers, a little bit inland, but the people are from Hungary, and she happened to be her and her husband in Hungary, and the farm is kind of like a working farm. People can go horseback riding, and they had horses and pigs and cows and you name it. Got completely flooded. All the horses, they were able to save all the horses, get them to higher ground. They lost a lot of their pigs, and so they need, basically they need to rebuild, but they need to be able to work and offer their services. She's hoping that horseback riding will come back within the next week or two, but their stalls, one of their main stalls is huge, and it has major damage. The news reporters, it looks like that if you just touch one of the beams, it's going to fall over.
Right.
Ripped off the roof, and so they need leads and halters and buckets and you name it to run a farm and get back up and running, which they are going to do. There's even the Bucks, the football game Sunday night. They had started, I don't know, I think it was started with them, but I'm not sure, Florida Strong. And a lot of the guys were wearing the T-shirts. And the Bucks owners and a lot of the players donated a bunch of money to the relief effort. And did you see the pictures of the Publix caravan?
I saw there was a going down to the Fort Myer area, and basically this is why we love Florida or something. I saw the thing. Somebody did a meme of it, and was talking about
Yeah, they had a convoy of Publix semis heading south, and Publix has always been a good supporter of community forever. So everybody pulls together and go through this again. So, but it's important to keep your mental health right, and it can be hard during these times. That's why you got to stay connected with people.
Well, and again, circling back from a minute, coming off the crux of this, and again, thinking of, the suicide losses, my own family, just,
You guys haven't caught a break in the last few months.
It's one of those things where, and I think this is where I would say, when you're talking about, having, these conversations about, or the difficult conversations, especially around, loss and grief and everything else like that, it's how you, approach it. And arguably would say, I remember I posted, come on, like, can we please catch a break? But, at the same time, it's like, all right, you know what? You can either allow what's happening to, like, just completely devastate you and, leave you non-functioning, or leave you in that dark spot, or you can say, okay, you know what? Let me soldier through this event. And, sometimes people look at it, it's because I'm soldiering through the event doesn't mean that I don't, it hasn't affected me in some way. Long story short, it was wild. I was surprised, I mean, it was a very short message from Devin's mother. And it just said, Bonnie, my father died last night. And I'm like, well, one, I didn't, I didn't know, I'm like, okay, and, of course, I'm sitting back as I'm, typing, responding back to this news. I'm thinking of everything that we've talked about, here on the show. What do people say to people who have just experienced a loss? And, it's kind of like the stupid things that you say. And, of course, I'm like, are you okay? What happened? Reach out. And, as I'm, and then I think when I said, what happened? Are you okay? I think my next follow-up sentence to that was, I know these are some stupid questions. You know what I mean? Like, I know these are some dumb questions. However, they're the questions to be asked. I'm going to reserve, comment on, what happened. But I immediately thought, my brain immediately thought to, how am I going to break this to Devin, that his grandfather's gone? How's this going to affect him, given everything else that he's lost?
Mm-hmm.
And it so brought to the forefront a lot of what we have been talking about in the books, in terms of, being there for that person, what to say, what not to say.
Mm-hmm.
And, he handled it, he as best as I would expect. But the interesting dynamic, her father's gone now, his mom wants to move here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she wants to relocate to Florida, which I have an issue with,
Now,
per se.
isn't she the one that hasn't really been?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway,
Well,
it's, it is what it is. It's just, understanding that natural disasters happen. It doesn't stop, life itself. Like, again, our Friday meeting this morning, when we were talking about one of the events that, our focus group is, or the WPBA, Bowling for Boobs.
Right.
Just because there's a natural disaster doesn't mean that, people who are battling cancer, that stops.
It doesn't stop.
Hey, we're going to put cancer, your cancer's going to go on hold for a minute while you get this natural event. It's not going to happen. Just because natural events happen, it does not stop other, natural like events to happen. The 3 people that took their lives. What is going on? Was it because of the storm? Was it something else?
Well, and we have said many times, especially with suicide, it's not generally one thing that happens. It's accumulation, and it could be just the one last thing that they.
Well, we look at it. There's a phrase that goes along with. There's a phrase that goes along with when we talk about suicide, and the phrase says something like it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
And, oftentimes we're on chapter 16, if that's what you're looking.
Yeah, I'm trying to find 16.
And unfortunately there are some people, One starts at 165. There are some people that, unfortunately, see this as that is the solution because they're so overwhelmed and there's no other strategy in place. Or at the time, they don't have the strategy ahead of them yet. Or they're not equipped with the proper strategy to get over the hump, and that's certainly out.
Yeah, I don't know. I have been recently coming across and looking at, and evidently there's been a couple that have been going on for a while that I don't know why it's not talked about or more isn't being done, but it's beginning to happen, is they're studying the brains of people who have taken their lives. And I'm working on getting more information on the research of what these different studies are coming through with. They're definitely coming up with a couple different correlations in the brain, or if there's one thing, basically it's two things, and I probably should wait until I really know what I'm talking about, but there's like two things in the brain that you could have, and you could have one or you could have the other, but if you have both, that could be an indicator. But anyways, they are finally doing that. I really, of course it was in the aftermath, but I thought about it afterwards, but to have Bobby's brain part of a study for that, number one, not because of the suicide, but also because he had multiple sclerosis. But you think of those things when you don't think of him in the moment. So we are on chapter 16. We're getting closer finally, and our book, How to Carry What Can't Be Fixed. You can still get the book through Amazon. We have that QR code. And if you want to go through it with us, you can go back through all of our past episodes are on demand and still go through the book with us. We're going to be choosing a new book really soon. So if anybody has any suggestions, let us know. And we can get a link up on the website and start going through the next one with us. Okay?
Yeah, I found this chapter very interesting. It's chapter 16. It's entitled Master of Two Worlds. And I like where it starts off with, and this is a quote from the book, "There is no going on, there is no moving on, there is only moving with, an integration of all that has come before and all that you have been asked to live." And, I found that very interesting because I use this analogy, as it goes on where it says living with grief is a bridge, the before and the after, and there's this need to find the connection between the two worlds. And, as I was reading, especially when they said, this bridge, again, I use the analogy of a bridge in a lot of my work. Like, for instance, when I'm working with middle schoolers, I tell them, when I have them as seventh graders, all right, so you guys have just started this journey over this bridge, over here is elementary school, where we expect, the immaturity, milk and cookies, not a lot of responsibility, or a lot of the things that you're responsible for is usually dictated by a teacher. Once you hit seventh grade and you're on top of that bridge, okay, so basically you still have 1 foot over here in immaturity, 1 foot over here in the last 4 years of your, primary academic life. Then, 8th grade, you're on this side of the bridge, and then 9th, you step off and you're in high school. So when I look at the bridge analogy as it relates to, grief and loss, it is over here, we have all of those, and, she does a good job with this in talking about memories. The next section is on memories. But, we sit back and we think about everything that happened before the loss, and now it's like understanding. I mean, I don't want to get stuck here, or we shouldn't find ourselves stuck here. And if we are stuck with what was, then it's like, all right, how do you, kind of break that feeling to cross over, to this side of the bridge where it's like, okay, so now I have to live this new life. And I think sometimes what happens is, we are still, in that disbelief. Again, going back to, our mutual friend of our meeting, this morning when he was talking about his friend that had just taken his life, and he goes, I'm not angry, let me take that back, angry, not happy, but it's like, a feeling of calm coupled with this feeling of anger. And, the calmness was, or sadness and anger is what he was, what he was saying. Of course, the sadness comes with, this is a loss. This person's not here anymore. The anger side of it was like, how could you be so selfish, to end your life and, have us all deal with the fact that you're not here. And, I'm like, it's normal to feel that way. It is absolutely normal, especially, when, it's someone who you're leaving behind, young children, or, somebody that, let me take back what I just said for a second. It shouldn't matter whether or not the person had children or not, although that's a huge factor. How do you tell these young children that their parent is gone? More, understanding, I should say, is the fact that anybody who's left behind, whether it is family members, whether it is friends, even if it was, we're business associates. And so, like I said, living, looking at this bridge, for some people, crossing over that bridge to here's what my life is over here is often seen as a betrayal. I am minimizing or making less significant the contribution or the impact that this person made on my life. I'm going to cross over the bridge and I'm going to set you, you can sit in a corner right now, you'll be okay. When that's not the, I don't think that's being suggested at all.
No, and I don't see it that way. I see it like for me, it's, I was here in the before. This is what our life was. I didn't choose this. It wasn't my choice to have to go over this bridge. You still want what was, even though it can never be. It's not, even in the moment. It's not. But it's not my choice to have to go over there. But I have to at some point.
Yeah. It's, for some people,
it can be baby steps.
It is, but, and unfortunately some people, their bridge is a rope bridge that's swinging, as they're trying to navigate their way across it. And it's like, oh, can I do this? Can I, a lot of doubt. Can I do this? Can I do this? There are some people that their bridges are wooden, a little more sturdy, but I don't know if that piece of wood is rotten and I'm going to fall through, and then, fortunately for some people, their respective bridge is rock solid. You know what? I'm going to get over this thing and, continue to, continue on with life. Yeah, really, you can't bring that person back, you're still here, whether I want to call it processing, navigating, whatever. I knew these were going to fall. Whatever's going on, allowing, one, I think it's important, to recognize, or have a clear understanding. What does your bridge look like? Once you know what your bridge looks like, then, you can develop whatever strategy you need to safely make it across the bridge. because to stay over here it's not.
Well, it's not healthy, and your bridge doesn't have to be like someone else's.
Right.
Yours is gonna, it's gonna be individual. I mean, my journey is as individual as I am, and that's the way it's gonna be, for someone else too. How I navigate isn't going to be how somebody else navigates, and probably wouldn't want to navigate the way I do, but at times, because I admit it's I have I still have my really difficult times, and even going through, which may sound kind of weird, but going through kind of like these traumatic events of natural disasters, and something's coming right at you and you have to prepare, and you got to do it without someone who's, for the most part, most of the time, you did it all together. And it's hard, and sometimes it's frustrating, and I let my frustrations out in the yard.
Well, and I mean, that's a nice segue into the section that she writes on memories, where she goes, especially in early grief, we replay events and memories in our mind, desperate to hold on to them. We've lost so much. We're afraid to lose what little we have left, the things we remember, the inner pictures of our life before. At the same time, there are things we wish we could forget, the image of the person suffering or the last argument we had. And, again, as I'm reading this, I'm like, what? She's spot on with it. There are, memories that, we want, we hold on, we do hold on to so much, because it's like, if I forget this memory, or, look at it as a way to, I'm keeping this person alive by this memory. I still, for example, when I'm thinking of memories, I'll hear sounds in my kitchen, and I think I said this before, and I sit up and I'm like, Pat, is that you? Especially if there's no one else in the house, or I'll call out who's in the kitchen. No one will answer. Pat, is that you? And it's, people are like, well, are you, wait a minute, aren't you a little off your rocker here? And I was like, no. For me, it's like I'm holding on. I find comfort in that memory that Patrick was prone to raid the kitchen all hours of the night. And I'd Pat, and he'd answer back, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I go back to sleep. I go back to sleep, or go back to doing what I'm doing. Versus, I hear a sound in the kitchen and I blow it off. It's whatever.
Well, too, and when we've talked about this, you believe in the spirituality aspect of things.
Oh, I believe my house is haunted. I mean, let's just call it like it is.
Well, I wouldn't have gone to
let's just call it, I make no bones. And for me, it is a joke. But I mean, I say, no, let's just call it like it is. My house is haunted. Before, the spirit of Patrick, joined in, the ghost in my house, his name is George. I'm sorry, when my garage door opens and shuts by itself on a routine, there's some.
Yes, okay.
So, no.
Well, you have more than one ghost.
We're not sugarcoating it. My house is haunted. My good ghost.
Well, and like even with this hurricane, one of the stories that I always tell with hurricane preparedness, we've always had chickens, and our chickens used to be on the other side of our property. And years ago, this was a long time ago, Category 1 hurricane was coming across Florida. It was coming from the East Coast to the West Coast, but it was coming right over the top of us. And Bobby and I were out in the middle of this hurricane coming right over the top of us, wrapping up our chicken coop with tarps and bungee cords, while the eye of the storm is going right over us. And that's like a good memory of a hurricane.
It is.
You know.
I mean, it is. And, she talks about it, what are your treasures? Draw a collage or note things that you hold dear, hold most dear to you. She has this picture of this box, which I'm sure you'll probably color, but I won't.
Of course, I know. I was going to say, well, you're not going to color
Not gonna
yours.
color my book.
My book has colors and marks and writing and everything in it.
But again, this is another thing that I love about, what, she is illustrating in the book that, again, it's okay to hold on to these memories. It's okay, to think back, on them with fondness. When I'm, cleaning my garage for the billionth time, I, think about, you know what, this is something that Pat and I used to do together. Again, we're not going to do this anymore. I, think, or process the symbolism every time, almost without fail. I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, every time I open the garage door and I start cleaning, there's this dragonfly that ends up in my garage. And, it either, sits itself on the lawnmower handle or something. And it'll just sit there, like it's watching me. And I look at this dragonfly and I'm like, what up, buddy? Like, what up, son? I see you over there. You come to help me, And I mean, it's living that memory. You come to help me clean the garage, huh? All right, let me see. I'm going to just see how much I get done. Yeah. I know you told me I should throw away some of the, like, why do I have all this stuff? I don't know the answer to that either. But, and again, it's not losing touch with reality. It's not having a psychotic break or anything like that. It is, just what she says here. It's okay to keep memories alive.
Well, and it's a good way, to process our feelings. And, it's not as though that just because they're not here in the physical doesn't mean that they're not here. I still sometimes, and it's kind of a joke between my neighbor and I, and she says it's going to happen for the rest of my life. And I think I've come to the end of it. It's finding empty Budweiser cans. And I'll be doing something, clean up a part of the shop that I hadn't got to. And I'm like, are you kidding me, Bobby? And I mean, to me, it's his way of saying, well, I'm still here, So, yeah, and it is. It's not like you're losing your mind.
No, it's not. And, I'm watching our countdown. It's like, we got a few more pages. We'll end up, finishing this next week, I think, the last few pages. But and we'll kind of close on this section of the book where it says companions, not replacement. That phrase, and of course for me, and I look at what, things that I've been taught, my own training of, my own profession, that yes, but.
Yeah.
And, we've said, lose the but, lose the but, because to me it's like, once you say but, everything you said before,
Exactly.
it's canceled out. However, I like what she says here in terms of the, so much of grief, support, and even in just everyday life involves the yes, but response. They're gone, but you should be grateful, or I'm sorry for your loss, but think of the, the time that you had, yeah, they're not with you now, but look at the time that you did have with them. And, there are times where we look at it, it's like, okay, you know what, for instance, the one that I used to get, told a lot from a family member, I understand your grief. I understand he's gone, but you have other children.
Right.
It's important, that people acknowledge that that loss will never be replaced. Like you will never put something in its place. There will never be, I might run across, like when I'm working, with young, kids. And I have one little boy. It's like, what's your name? Patrick. And I was like, oh, I'm going to remember your name. That was my son's name. What's your name? Aiden. Oh, I remember your name. That's my grandson's name. At the same, use those two names as as an example. Just because I know this person who is Patrick, just because I know this person who is Aiden, they're not going to replace. There's no way they can replace Patrick, my son, Patrick or Aiden, my grandson. And again, remembering that having a companion is in no way a betrayal. And it's okay.
Well, and there's one sentence in here that I want to get in. It's, life isn't either or. It's both and.
Yes. Yes.
So remember, we have our hotlines, the new Prevention Lifeline 988, which is a call or text number. And make sure you put these in your phones. You have them available. And our positive quote for today is...
Life is made of so many moments that mean nothing. Then one day, a single moment comes along to define every second that comes after. Such memories are tests of courage, of strength. I found this quote in one of the schools that I work in, the classroom that I'm in, the teacher... it's a English class, English lit class. And as I'm looking for quote of the day, I saw that and I was like, oh my God, how applicable it is to, not even thinking about the chapter, that life is a minute. So,
but remember, there's always hope.